So I guess this is the first official welcome to the Untamed Ambition Podcast. This is the intro. I've been thinking about doing something like this for quite some time. I have some unique perspectives and interesting stories, or situations, I should say, stories about experiences, stuff like that I think you guys and gals would find interesting. So I want to share some of those things and kind of bring you up to speed on some of the things that I'm doing along the way, why I do things that I do. And then also, with this podcast format, I'm going to have more conversations with people that I know and just talk about things, right? Things that I'm interested in. Obviously, I'm heavily involved in the outdoor industry, so it'll be weighted towards that for sure. But I'm also a father and a husband, and this is kind of a chaotic time that we live in, right? So there's a lot going on in the world. And for me personally, it's hard for me to focus on hunting 100% of the time, but it is a very huge part of my life. So that really is, where the Untamed Ambition came from to begin with, is just this constant drive to, I guess, just accomplish what I want to accomplish. And, it's served me well. And for the most part, it all comes back to the habitat, the natural element of life, and, going out of my way to do things that some people wouldn't do, some people never think about doing. A lot of people would look at it and, just find it unnecessary. But just doing things that I do because I think that it will have a better outcome. And not, how do I explain it? Not cutting corners, essentially, just purely for the convenience factor. Because every aspect of convenience comes at a cost somewhere else, right? That's just the reality. It might not cost you something. It might cost the next generation something, or the next person something, right? So I'll go into that in more detail. But that's kind of the premise of, the whole aspect of the Untamed Ambition. And then I went full-time consulting habitat stuff, and I do most of my consulting for clients that are interested in improving the recreational or hunting opportunities. But I didn't want my business name to be something whitetail hunting specific, because I think that there's a much bigger picture here than just going out and killing a deer, right? That's a healthy byproduct of what I'm trying to achieve, which is helping people first and foremost notice, but secondly, rehabilitate or develop habitat that had been lost, or just has more potential because it's not currently being managed. That's my goal. The hunting aspect of it is, that's what makes it fun. I meet a lot of great people, that share a very common mindset, and then I share my perspective and my experience with them, above and beyond just the hunting thing. I've been a very successful whitetail hunter here in the Midwest. I see all these whitetail consultants popping up all the time, and I just think to myself, that's great, good for you, chasing your dream sort of thing. I'm not really judging it or looking at it as competition, so to speak. I think about what their lifestyle is compared to my lifestyle, and the things that I do and why. And I just wonder about things that they do and why. Just because we have similar careers, I guess. Because, it's not like the normal relatable career. There's only been a handful of people that do it, period, right? This type of consulting work, and for good reason. To be blatantly honest, I think that whitetail consulting, the mere concept of whitetail consulting is somewhat of a joke. There's just a lot of variables and a lot of opinions in hunting, and there's a lot of ways to do it and be successful. And there's a lot of different goals and a lot of different standards, and all of those things need to be set by the individuals. So it's just an interesting career in general. I always tell my clients that I consult on the habitat. It's a tangible thing. You can look at it, you can observe it, you can measure it, and you can scientifically prescribe improvements for those things. Okay, my background's in wildlife biology. I originally went to college for wildlife biology. Post college, I actually ended up getting a job in the outdoor industry, and that's where I worked for the last 10 plus years. So I've been immersed in it. I love everything about it. A lot of great people, a lot of not so great people, but that's every demographic. But I've seen behind the curtain. Let's just say that. Okay, I've learned a lot of things. I've had some good mentors over the years. I've observed a lot. I've listened a lot. I've probably listened a lot more than I talk, right? Most people that know me well probably would say the same, unless you get me going, right? Especially on hunting stuff or things I'm passionate about. But I've soaked in a lot, and I'm just saying I've seen all different levels of success in the outdoors, in the hunting industry. And, I look at some of those things and I'm blown away. I'm absolutely impressed. And the other ones I look at and understand the situation, and, it is what it is, right? It's not my ideal way of hunting by any means, but I'm not judging anyone or anything. I just, it's kind of one of those, like, I don't want that for me, but it's okay for you. Cool. Anyway, because of that, and, again, there's so many ways that you can be successful in the sport. I just don't think that whitetail consulting is like a real thing, or whitetail strategist or something, right? I mean, that's more reasonable. But when it comes to like designing a property and stuff like that, there's just a lot of factors, a lot of elements, and there's a lot of ways to skin that cat at the end of the day. So I think that the mere concept of whitetail consulting is somewhat of a joke. So what I always tell my clients is that I consult on the habitat because it's tangible, right? Yada, yada, yada. But I coach on the whitetail side of things. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to bring as much of my experience to the table and share what I've learned through those experiences, through my successes and my failures. That's my goal with all my clients, and that's what I strive to do. So that's what I want to get into more with this podcast format, this video podcast format, and really dig deep into some of these scenarios that I go through. Because every time I start to play these scenarios out in my head, I can reference a failure or a success that I've had and try to relate that to the current situation. And that's how you inevitably learn and move forward, right? I have kids now, right? I find myself explaining things nonstop. I have clients. I'm always explaining stuff to them. That's my job, right? I manage people. I'm always explaining stuff to people, how to do things. But when it comes back to my kids, I always find myself like on this verge of being philosophical, on that relative scale when you're speaking to a child, but not trying to be, just trying to explain things like how I understand them through the experiences I've had, right? So I don't want like the things that I say in this podcast to come off as like being philosophical. That's not my goal with this by any means. But, if you perceive it that way, or it hits home with you, then there's probably a reason for that. So I just wanted to preface this whole conversation, this conversation with myself, or this whole podcast with that, because I think that there's going to probably be a fair amount if this is the format that I follow, which is the fact that it's the middle of the night right now, right? I'm not here trying to make a fashion statement or show off my level of testosterone or anything because I'm sitting here in a bathrobe in front of a wall of big deer. That's not my goal. My goal is to be able to finally push this podcast out, which, one of my goals with this podcast is I want to keep it as real time as possible, as current events as possible, and just kind of help walk through the season for a lot of people, but also, like I said, try to keep up with current events and a lot of the things that are going on in the world, just as like a conversation type thing, right? It's easy to focus purely on the hunting aspect of the outdoors, but there's a lot of things happening around us, around the world, that are slowly taking away our right, our God-given right to go out and hunt and provide food for our families, or even farm and provide food for our families. There's a lot of things going on right now that are infringing on those rights. So I think those are important things to cover, and those are some of the conversations and stuff that I want to have with some of the people that I look up to and respect, and I think that the listeners will as well. So that's the goal for this podcast. Anyway, enough about the introduction to this podcast. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. As I said, it is 11 o'clock at night. 11:11. Supposed to make a wish on that? Got cell cam picture, and there he is. That there is the buck that I'm after. That is the buck I'm after this fall. Currently, he's not my number one buck. He's a fantastic deer, as you can see from the picture. I'll throw up some more pictures. This buck he's a very mature 8-pointer, and I really, really want to kill a big 8-pointer just because they're impressive animals. So here I am in the middle of the night trying to go to sleep because I have a lot of work I need to get done tomorrow, and I'm also a single dad this week. My wife is gone on a work trip, but it's the middle of the night and I can't stop thinking about this deer. So here I am recording this podcast, this video podcast, in my bathrobe in the middle of the night because I can't sleep, and I figured I may as well make use of the time. So a little background on this deer. We have recently named him Yoda. That was a name chosen by my son. He's in a Star Wars phase right now, and I'm kind of into it too, I guess. I've never really watched it, so it's fun to experience those things with him for the first time. But anyway, this buck's name is Yoda, And it's fitting. You picture Yoda with the wide ears, and this buck is he's just a wide framed, beautiful, clean 8-pointer. So Yoda is my current target buck, and I know exactly where he is right now. All day long, I anticipated him showing up on this specific camera, and he did, right at dark. It would have been, most likely would have been shooting light. It was kind of hard to know. It was like probably 30 minutes, right around the 30-minute mark past sunset. So, that is usually right around the time that it's too dark to shoot, but it's very overcast and raining on and off today. So it would have been dicey. My problem is that, all right, I know where he's bedding. Without a shadow of a doubt, I know where he is bedding. He is bedding in basically the buck nest of our farm. This is an impossible spot to hunt for a buck. Absolutely impossible. It's a tight draw, and most of the cover is created by topography, which I always tell my clients all the time. I tell everyone, topography is the greatest form of cover that there absolutely is. There's nothing better for cover than topography. It just doesn't have a food factor or browse element to it. So it's not going to hold deer all the time because they need to eat. But if there's food around and early in the season, there's probably plenty of browse in there, but not a lot of woody browse. So it'll, once the plants here start to desiccate and dry down, these deciduous plants or trees and annual plants and weeds and stuff like that, once they dry down, they're going to lose palatability, and those deer aren't going to stick around there as much. Then the pressure will start pushing them back in there again. So this buck is, without a shadow of a doubt, living in this buck nest. And the winds are the same all week long. My son and I went out and hunted for him in a more accessible spot on Sunday evening. It was rain all day Saturday, rain most of the day Sunday, on and off, and we got in a blind, and he didn't show up. But he did show up on a different food source that I've been monitoring that I can't really hunt real well. It's just a really hard spot to hunt. The way the thermals pull into the spot right at dusk, and that's where those bucks come from. So usually what I can do on our farm when I go back to hunt is if I give myself the right amount of time, usually 2 to 3 days, within just a few sits, the combination of bouncing around and checking a couple trail cameras, maybe running a couple cell cams. I'm not a big cell cam guy, and I'll explain that in the future, but checking a couple cams, jumping in observation stands or other locations, and just by process of elimination and information collection, usually within 1 to 2 sits or 24 to 36 hours, I can find my target buck if he's on the farm. So that's absolutely critical, and that pressure is going to dictate whether he's there or not. But this buck right now is living in this buck nest. I've had a lot of encounters with bucks in this area the last few years. I can't kill one there. It's impossible for me. It's gotten to the point where I find bucks in other areas on our farm, but I just have this personal hurdle that I need to overcome, which is harvesting a deer in this spot. I mean, I was after a buck a few years ago that the absolute stud deer, a buck I called Beamer. I posted some pictures of him on social media over the years. Just an incredible deer, a big, typical frame on him. And I went after that deer, I think 26 times that year I was hunting for him. Went out and hunted specifically targeting that deer 26 times, and I had like 22 encounters with him, and I could not get an arrow in him. I just couldn't get a shot. You know, the couple of times I had him in bow range, he came through going 100 miles per hour and couldn't get him to stop, and that was that. And man, I just had a lot of crazy encounters, and it was a fun season. I've got a lot of cool footage from that season that I'm really excited to share with you guys and kind of explain some of these stories and these scenarios and the decisions for making the moves I made. But what I learned first and foremost from that deer was, one, trust your instincts. Just trust your instincts, because I went so hard after that deer, made some really aggressive moves, and was so close so many times, all while doing everything I could to not put pressure on him. I don't think I ever got busted by him. I was always playing it very, very safe with that deer. And that's why he stuck around in that area so long. But it was just, he was so consistent with where he was bedding because of what the pressure was doing on the farm that I learned a lot about that area. So I've got a lot of experience with that particular area. Right now, the buck that I'm after is bedding in that area, and I know that he's not killable in that exact area. So I've done some things this year to try and lure him out of that area, or lure future bucks out of that area, and I'm going to explain those things. But my current predicament is I know exactly where that deer is. I know exactly where I want to put the stand. I've got the perfect wind for it right now, or the closest thing to perfect that I will ever have for this spot. And I can't hunt. I can't get away from home. And obviously my family is the most important thing in my life, so I'm not gonna put them at risk or in jeopardy in any way to go slip away and kill this deer right now. But I just have to hope that he sticks to this routine and nothing changes between now and the next time that I can hunt. And I'm not going to say when that is. That'll be coming up in the next episode, when I do my whitetail only episode and I get more into the technical stuff. But this is just part of life, I guess. And that's why I'm up here in the middle of the night recording my first ever solo podcast. So that's it. I need to go to bed now. I really do. And this is going to be a raw cut because I'm not pulling anything out. I'm going to proof it, sync the audio, and I'm going to dump this. So once again, this is the Untamed Ambition Podcast. My name is Thomas Milsna. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this, follow along. I'm just going to keep on doing this every time I can't sleep, I guess, which should be a couple times a week. But take care. If you're getting out and you're hunting, hunt smart, hunt safe, and remember, wind is king. Always pay attention to the wind. Every aspect of the wind. Wind is king. Good night.